Are you kidding me? That's what?
Yeah, every so often it happens that Ryan is right.
100% right. Not even a little bit right.
Tucker Pullman, 2 points last game.
No kidding.
My man!
Hey, neither does me running shirtless, but that turned out very well. Welcome to the PP1 Podcast. It feels like forever since we've done one of these, doesn't
like
it?
Day before yesterday.
Yeah, practically. Day before yesterday, but it feels like forever, but it's not, and that's okay. Welcome. I'm going to switch up our thing here. Welcome to the PP1 Podcast, as our intro said. Again, for the people that maybe don't know how it works, it's professionally done. Done. I paid no dollars to make that happen. A lot of behind the scenes editing work, and then I just asked them to put a video in front of it. So, I mean, the audio is all me. That's all me. So I'm available for freelance. We've got Grady Sass on the show from Go Goat Sports.
Tongue twister.
Media. Deep breath. You may probably know him from Sekeres and Price and Rinkwide, and mostly Sekeres and Price. But I mean, first and foremost, welcome to the show, Grady. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks. Sorry we couldn't get this done earlier. I know you guys have been asking me to come on for a little while now, and life was getting in the way, and Canucks games every other night that we got to kind of get through and digest, and
get through is like the optimal phrase there.
Yeah.
He's got a real sports media job, and so ours is just like, it's sports media in a sense, but I mean, we could go at like 10 o'clock if we absolutely had to. You got a bit more of a strict timeline, so you've got some people to answer to. I answer to him, and usually he's just like, when are we going?
Yeah, I don't even know why he answers to me. I'm not sure where that happened.
That's true. So you're a little bit you're a little bit more professional than us, but that's okay.
Yeah, not married to a clock like traditional radio or television. That's a beauty of the digital world now, is that you can kind of piece things together as you go. Thanks for having me. It's cool to be here. I love the background you guys have here and kind of the setup you've all done. So the production value is looking pretty sharp, I must say.
You know what? Sometimes you have to spend a little money to make some money.
Yes.
Which
we're going to spend money soon.
Oh, I've been told.
Yeah. Eventually we might have to start making some money again. This is podcasting. We want to take this as professional as humanly possible, so that, the pucks on nets of the world, the Canucks conversations, like, they just
never heard of them.
They just got big. We've been big for a while. In fact, we've been number 6 in Taiwan for ages. Ages. I haven't got the update yet. I'll find out tomorrow if we're still in that top 10. But we make sure that we hang around. I should mention to everybody, we are live on the Dean Blendale Network. We are live on our YouTube and Facebook channel. So if you guys want to come have a chat with us, if you don't, that's cool too. But if you do, hey, there's a little chat thing on the side. If you're following along the live stream, it's just like the big times. Feel free to come on by. You guys, it is American Thanksgiving today. I'm sure you all watched 3 stunning games of football, all equally unique and exciting. But the big question I would like to ask both of you is, I guess, first of all, have either of you guys ever done a deep fried turkey that's went well? Because I've been watching these fail videos today, and I'm just thinking, isn't there a proper process to doing this? Because they all look like the houses are about to burn down. Or people do them in their kitchens, apparently, with like propane tanks and everything. Like,
that's silly.
I don't get
it. Come on.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, right?
I think you have to have like a crazy setup. Okay, so obviously there's like the correct way to do it. There's like, you're not sticking it in like the big pot, right? And trying to keep your temp. You're supposed to have like some sort of like burning barrel almost, I think, to do this. Yeah. And it's got to be done outside and on your deck. Like, I don't know anybody personally that's equipped to cook a turkey deep fried.
No.
So I've never done it. I've never seen one done. I have seen many fires.
Yeah, the fire video I was just watching before this, and it's like a 2-minute long feature video of like all the fails, and there are so many of them. Like houses
Oh,
are on fire,
can't
kitchens are
imagine.
on fire. I just
Yeah, well, a grease fire, that's like the worst kind of fire, right? Like, and
Oh,
yeah.
and like that's like, you're flipping in a pan, like you're trying to like maybe you're trying to cook the schnitzel or something like that, right? And then all of a
Schnitzel.
sudden that sucker catches fire. Like, okay, yeah, like I've got a cup of flour on hand to take care of that, but like imagine a whole vat of deep fryer oil, and that
No.
shit catches fire.
Well, it
Who's
usually
equipped?
dumps
Who has that much flour? Like who has like a 15-pound bag of flour around? Probably some people, but you probably need more than that. I feel like that's just
in
crazy
this
talk to me.
economy. Not me. No way.
Yeah.
Inflation is pretty much kibosh that in my
Yeah,
household.
I definitely. My mother-in-law complains about the cost of baking, so I'm just going to agree with you on that.
Yeah, I just assume that it's
You can't use whole wheat flour for that one, I guess.
we're doing a deep fried on a budget. Like that's probably where the real problems happen. So, and I had one more interesting question. Now, I've been thinking about this. Grady, you're out in the Lower Mainland. It's probably a little bit warmer than what we're getting here. I'm sure you have a little bit of snow sprinkled around there, a little bit.
Yeah, North Van, kind of Port Moody, Coquitlam. There's some dustings, but not too bad. Nothing in the city yet that creates the driving chaotic. Everyone forgets how to drive, or how to put snow tires even on your car.
Oh, yes.
Haven't seen any of that yet, so it's coming.
How cold is it though? Like how cold is it out there?
My computer tells me it's 0 degrees right now. So
Okay. So
yeah, it's been kind of hovering around that a little bit.
And you're talking about driving into work. Like what's kind of the the car situation in the morning? Like is it really cold, or are you like you're in a condo or so?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm in an underground parking lot, and getting out of the underground is actually quite the challenge, because there's a tough corner where you have the mirror to see, but a lot of people come in there and they don't know, they've never been in there before, because there's a P1 level that has Thrifty's parking lot, and some people are just so timid. And I mean, I don't blame them, because it's a tight corner, but if you live there for a year, you kind of get used to it after a while, right?
Makes sense.
And then trying to get onto the highway or fly down Hastings to get to downtown as quick as I can. So yeah, it can be a challenge, but I'm lucky. I live right by a SkyTrain, so sometimes I just take that, put the earbuds in, fire up the PP1 podcast, and
oh, he knows. It's good plug there. So my big question to both of you guys, because I've been thinking about this a lot. I drive around town a lot for work, and we're getting into the colder season, obviously, especially in Kelowna. Like we're in the minuses pretty regularly, not the big ones, but enough that you're gonna have the heat on. So I want to know with you guys, what is your preferred car setting? Are you high heat on the feet, or are you the hot heat in your face? Do you like a nice mix, or like what's your jam? Like what do you prefer on your drive? Ted, go for it.
Ooh.
I think so. I just assume that everybody's like this. So you warm the car up with like the high heat and the defrost mix, right? So it's like kind of in your feet. And then when I get in there, I think like you start driving, the thing automatically goes down to 3, and then you're in the car for about 15 minutes, and then it's down to like a 1 on the feet.
Yeah.
And then maybe you're switching to like half and half, but I prefer, like, I don't really like having the hot air like blow in my face. It actually like annoys the hell out of me.
I'm with you. Yeah.
What about like hand level? Do you like tilt it just so it's just hands, not at your face? Like
no, because then it's just blowing at me, and like nobody wants to like get into their car and then like disrobe, right? So I don't mind driving with like my hoodie on. Like I can drive with my jacket on or whatever. It's not a big deal. I'm comfortable, but I'm not into having to take layers off. And to me, there's nothing worse than being like hot in a car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with you there, Teddy. I usually have like a sweater or a jacket.
Yeah.
I don't get that cold. I guess maybe because I'm like a bigger fella. A lot of meat, whale blubber wrapping me, keeping me warm.
Hey, I got hair, man. That's the same thing.
That works. Yeah. I kind of just let the temperature, whatever it is in that car. If like it doesn't get cold enough really down here for me. And by the time I get out of the underground parking lot and driving along, like I don't really notice it. Now, my girlfriend does this weird thing where she likes the cold breeze, so she cracks the window down and just pumps the hot air on her, and like that irritates me so much, because I'm getting different temperatures coming all in coming all over me, and I was just like, no, I want to just be myself. I'm content with
He's
my
made the
body
clip.
temperature.
We've already got the clip. There we go. We've already got the clip.
myself.
How about like in the
I just
summertime?
gollywalled myself.
You did exactly.
Yeah.
Just like good comment. So
Yeah.
like, what about the summer then? Does your girlfriend do like the full down window, full AC blast? Is she one of those?
Yeah.
They're a
And I'm
special
like,
breed.
why?
They're a special breed.
That's not efficient whatsoever.
She
What
likes
are you
the
doing?
breeze, though.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's like, have you seen that Family Guy? Where I seem to see this clip pop up on like Facebook a lot. But Peter picks up this guy and he's like, I think he was Ubering or something. He's like, hey, like, do you want windows down or air conditioning? He's like, have you ever done both? He's like, what? And he, so sure enough, just cruising. He's like, thank you, stranger, for like opening my mind, kind of thing. Like it's this unknown world that people live in. So it's interesting. It's a choice, basically. I don't know. I'm Windows usually.
Full disclosure, when I saw that in the prep notes here, I thought you meant like you're sitting back in your seat, your feet up blasting. I'm just like, man, nobody needs to smell my stinky feet, the cold air projecting through. So I was fully prepared for that, but I'm glad.
I think it's better I started then, right? It's better that I kind of threw out the question instead of just let you assume. You're like, oh, that wasn't what he meant. Okay, good.
What season is it again? I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. This is a Canucks-based show, so I guess the people that have actually tuned in and are still listening 10 minutes in would probably want to know what we're going to talk about for the Canucks. So things have been up and down. We're out of the Bedard sweepstakes for this week anyway. Big win in Colorado. The Canucks are scoring at a rampant pace. They're also letting in goals slightly more than they're scoring, which is never a good thing. If you're letting in more, then you're usually losing. But before we get to like the team itself, there's some things that we all now know. Bo Horvat is tied with Connor McDavid for most goals in the NHL, which I did not have on my bingo card this year. I don't think anyone ever would have said that sentence in its entirety. Now, I just kind of clicked in on this last night. You guys have obviously seen the Connor McDavid Bo Horvat commercial. Yes, Ted, I'm sure you've seen it at least once. Is there like a small possibility that commercial like unearthed this like extra gear?
Oh, I've never thought of it like that.
I know. This is what we do. We bring out the really hard-hitting questions that no one will ask. Mainly, they probably shouldn't, but I was just thinking maybe that's the key. So I guess who would be the next guy to be in a commercial and who would be the other superstar? So who's the Canucks, whoever, and then the superstar that we basically leech talent from? It's a tough one.
Like a Leon Draisaitl, Elias Pettersson, perhaps.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Could have a bit of like the European flair.
Yeah.
Of some sorts. I don't know what they'd be selling.
Cars,
yeah. German automobiles.
German cars, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
What about like Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar? Like that would be fun to just maybe add some goal scoring to that Quinn Hughes esque skating.
Fill him right out.
Yeah, then he's just like the complete D-man, right?
I like that. I think, or we could have.
I like the Draisaitl one better. I think, though.
I think they'd be interesting together. I think that would be. I think they both have some salesmanship to do there. I think that could work out. And I mean, they're just good enough, but there's probably a little bit of like that shy awkwardness in there as well.
Hey, Petey's done the Capilano Audi. No free.
That's true.
But,
that's true.
So he has experience with it.
That's true.
And I think like he seems like one of those types of players that wants to build a brand outside of hockey.
Petey, yeah.
You've seen some of the ads he's done with I forget what headphone company it was with, but kind of coming out of his shell, showing us the personality. And I don't have to tell you this, but you guys this, but like we all know hockey players aren't the most interesting people. So the more we can kind of see the personality, I think the more they can, people can actually relate to them other than oh, he's just really good at putting a piece of frozen rubber in the back of a net, right? So
That's true.
I think as you see him kind of mature here, he'll really kind of build that brand of himself off the ice. Now, you could say, okay, over the last year or so, like he wasn't performing up to the standards on the ice. So why would he, put all that um, time and effort into doing that? Because you can hear the naysayers. Oh, he's spending more time doing ads and commercials, and he's not focusing on hockey. Blah blah blah. Like as if
Yeah.
you know what his day to day regimented schedule is, right? So yeah, I think Pedersen would be a good one. Who else here?
I think Pedersen could have his own probably candy commercial after last game.
Yeah,
So Swedish
that
fish.
was weird.
That was
Yeah.
something. Ted, you saw that too?
Berries.
I didn't
So
see the Swedish fish thing. No.
Okay, so it was right at the end of the game too, wasn't it? Like on the power play.
Yeah.
And a fan in Denver threw a bag of candy at Pedersen at the hit him and then a bag of candy just explodes. There's like gummy bears, there's like I think like Sour Patch Kids and stuff. Just all over the place, which
He's
is
helping clean it up too. I love that.
He's gonna go like
Good
full
guy.
like Marshawn Lynch with the Skittles, but he's just gonna go like Swedish fish or Swedish berries. Like
Yeah.
that seems
Yeah.
like he's sitting on something that could be huge. The Swedes have always like been good like that. Like Zetterberg kind of had his own thing, this whole persona like in hockey, outside of hockey, like Lundqvist obviously. But you see kind of some of that in PD for sure. So I don't know. It could be something there. I like this whole Swedish fish idea though. That's kind of cool.
it's he's now the Candyman, but we can't say it 3 times, otherwise we got some problems.
Uh-oh.
We got some problems, so we don't need to get into to a horror situation. So we'll get into the Canada soccer in a little while because that's obviously the talk. But again, let's get back to the Canucks. They did beat Colorado. Probably, I know Colorado was hurting as far as injuries go, and the Canucks definitely helped that along, which was kind of nice. But they basically won a game where we all assumed that they were going to lose. Things have been kind of teetering. Grady, you're kind of in the epicenter of where this is all going down. We're kind of seeing this from afar. What are your thoughts on kind of what's going on right now? Like, is this team about to like kick out of the slump that we're all hoping they'd continue, or?
I'm gonna say probably not. However, last night was one of those games where you actually saw some progression at 5-on-5. Anytime you can hold, those big guns of McKinnon and Makar to, only power play production, I think you're doing something right. There's been so much talk about the lack of defensive structure, and rightfully so. So I would say if we kind of start to see that, especially against Vegas here, like there's a juggernaut test that they're going to get kind of thrown to the wolves against them on Saturday at T-Mobile there. If they can kind of follow up that performance that they did last night, and their power play continues to produce like it has, like one of the best in the league. I think it's like 5th overall or something.
Yeah, they're clipping
last
for sure.
time I checked. And we all know the big issue is the PK. So if they can figure that out, the thing that really stood out to me was how good Pedersen was at limiting McKinnon, and kind of that two-way emergence you're really starting to see out of him in all situations, especially on the penalty kill. Like the way he's reading shooters and the anticipation and getting his stick in the kind of the shooting lanes and the passing lanes. And I think it's years of working a power play, and then he's such a smart player and so cerebral in the sense that like all those reps he's had on the power play over the years, he can kind of turn that around and use that to his advantage when he's on the penalty kill, because he can read players. He knows he can exploit them and pressure them into space that they may not feel comfortable with. And then at 5-on-5, did a great job at limiting McKinnon. Like I think McKinnon's Corsi was like 48%, Pedersen's Corsi was 48% against McKinnon's, and that's pretty damn good against one of the best players in the world, all things considered. So you're really starting to see his defensive two-way game come to light. For the longest time, like you would see Horvat get those matchup roles.
Mhm.
And now I thought it was interesting. Like Bruce mentioned at practice the other day that probably won't see Petey doing matchup roles as much because he wasn't good at faceoffs. And yet last night, like he looked so good at it. And now you see him on the PK kind of shutting teams down in that regard. So if they can figure that out, and maybe they move Miller off of the second unit and put a guy like Lazar in there, because we know Mikheyev with his speed, he's probably not going to come off the PK.
No.
And then another
He's
thing
just too
last
good.
night.
No,
Yeah.
he's too good, too fast.
Yeah. And another thing last night too, like OEL, I think he only played around 17, 18 minutes. He had 2 assists to go for it, like 2 primary assists, factored it on the tying goal, and then the game-winning goal. Less is more for him, I think, at this rate, which sucks considering what his contract is.
Mhm.
But him and Bear, I thought, played particularly pretty well last night, and they were able to chip in offensively. And like, we shouldn't be expecting them to chip in offensively. And for so long, we've wanted the Canucks decor, to start to produce, and you'll take that. But the last few years, OEL's kind of turned into that shutdown role. Hasn't done so great at it, but I think that's partially it's because they've relied on so much to play those big, tough defensive shutdown minutes. So maybe you start to kind of work Hughes's defensive game a little more and giving him, some of those minutes. And then if they can figure out what to do with Stillman, or if they keep Burrows in, which I hope they do, because I absolutely love what he brings, game in, game out when he's in the lineup. They don't need great goaltending, but they can't have crappy goaltending if they're going to have kind of the subpar defense. And Martin has been, it's almost like the team just feels a bit more confident when he's behind them. I mean, they've been scoring goals for both goalies. But the difference to me is Martin is coming up with those saves when you would least expect it, or when the game's tight, late in games. Whereas Demko is just, pucks are going through him. You can see that he doesn't look as confident. So if the goaltending can start to rise above where it's been at, and they can, here's that word, structure again, add a little more structure, and especially with the forwards, if they can start helping out more, especially a guy like Miller on the PK, you really notice it. But even at even strength, if they can start to win that 5-on-5 game, and then the penalty kill rounds out, we know the power play is going to be there. I'm not saying that they're going to go on this run here, but like, there's still a lot of hockey left. And the one thing is that the West is looking like the inferior conference this year. It could be wide open now. Specific, Calgary's kind of starting to round it together a little bit, although they lost in a shootout. Seattle's second in the division, which I don't think anybody had. So they're going to be fighting kind of for those wild card spots with the Nashvilles, the Minnesotas. St. Louis looks like they're going to be, kind of back in that mix too after their slow start. So there is elements of the game, like the goal scoring is great and all, but they just got to figure out the defensive side of it. And if they can round that out, then, they're going to be in the mix here. Now, it'll be interesting to see what management does in far as tinkering, and are they going to start to move some guys out, or what's going to happen with Horvat here, which will drastically change things. But as of now, I wouldn't count on them making a run. They're not good enough to be kind of in that contender or even playoff mix, but they're not good enough to bottom out. So they're stuck in that I
think that's
middle
kind of where
zone.
that's kind of where it's getting at too. Like, they were on this collision course for another, absolute explosion, which probably leads to trades, maybe leads to, again, the coach getting let go and potentially other moves. And then things kind of teeter out. Like, it's almost like we're wanting, absolute zero, ground zero to happen so that we can rebuild. And yet if we're all being realistic, there's no way that they blow everything up and start over. I don't think, as much as we say, oh, we'd be good with a full rebuild, there's no way if they traded everybody, I think we would, there would be a riot of a different kind. It'd be a regular season one, and I think people would be going nuts. I think now
It's weird though, right? Like,
yeah, it is weird.
there's like they're in this weird, like, nobody wants their team to suck, right? But like they can't do either. Like, they're not. It's like you said, Grady, right? They're not good enough to be a team that's challenging for a playoff spot where they can do any damage, at least. And Ryan, it's like you said, they're not bad enough to warrant a super high draft pick. So it's not that I think people are just cheering for them to lose, or like cheering for them to crack the dance and get into the playoffs. I think they're just, people understand that 17th and 18th is a net zero. It's a nothing. It means that no decisions will be made, right? It means that we'll probably stay the course and think that we're just good enough versus not good enough. And so that's, I think, what pisses people off, is that it's not that they're not trying to make a decision. It's that the roster that they built doesn't really allow them to make these decisions, and then making them is going to cause, it's almost like showing your hand, right? Like, now I've been riding the fence for so long. Now I have to decide whether I'm going to go with plan A or plan B. And that's going to really polarize things for like a huge majority of the fan base, probably 50%, right? I think, and anytime you're doing that with a fan base, I think everybody says it when new regimes and new ownership take over, that they're going to make changes and big things are going to happen. And that is all good until people's jobs are on the line. And then the worry starts to set in, right? Like, it would be great to, it would be great to go in and make things like, just make decisions carefree, but that just never seems to be what happens, right?
And then you look at like the goaltending,
so,
like
spot.
Grady. Yeah, like Grady, you're talking about Demko, and which has been,
nobody saw that coming.
No, like we were all talking Vezina this year, and thankfully Spencer Martin goes. I think is it 4-1-1 or
5-1-1 now.
So I mean, again, we're all freaking out. The sky's falling. Oh, Demko's letting in goals. That we're losing games. And then Spencer Martin comes in and he's winning games. Okay, well then we're going to be okay in the immediate future, that Demko can hopefully figure whatever's kind of ailing him, and we've got a guy that we all thought would be able to handle this job last season, and he has. And then we start looking at, again, we talk about how the season started. Like, they have one of the best power plays in the league. They're one of the top scoring teams in the league.
Yeah.
And yet they're the 30th team for goals against and, PK. So, like, there's all these really weird narratives. And, like, we used to talk about secondary scoring and how that was such a big deal. No one's yelling about that right now. We're like, well,
no,
it's kind of okay. We're getting an Ethan Bear. We're getting a Sheldon Dries. We're getting all these things happening. Oh, look who just scored the other day. Like, Brock Besser's not scoring. Yeah, but Bo Horvat is. Or, Quinn Hughes is getting assists. Oh, that's great. Like, there's all these really weird, like, bumps in the road. And you don't want to flatten out one so that one kind of rises, because it's going to create this new problem. Like, do we want to do that? Or do we want to subscribe to A or B, like Ted was saying? This was, of all the years, like we'll talk about Bedard in a second here, of all the years to, tank, if you will. And again, that's not even a guarantee because of the draft lottery.
Yeah.
But of all the years, like we joked about this 2 seasons ago, and I mean, here we are. And the Canucks actually have, a legitimate shot at them. At the same time, things are going just well enough where they could play themselves out of that talk within like a month. So we're in like this weird, not bizarro world, but it's almost just like we almost need a decision either way. Like, are we?
It's pretty bizarre.
It is. I mean, it is bizarre, but not a bizarro world where things are going well or something. But we're in just such a funky situation where you're right, Ted. I think I just want to know some kind of decision. I want to know where this needs to go. Are they going to move on a Bo Horvat? Like, are they going to try to make that happen? Or is it like they're saying and it isn't, and they're going to have to move him? Maybe it's at the deadline. Like, how long is each of these situations going to continue? And I think, again, in a year where there is, as the quotations, generational talent comes through, I don't know. I mean, that would be a pretty awesome thing to have a guy like Connor Bedard if we're going to lose a few players. Again, not guaranteed, but I mean, it'd be a great year to maybe be okay with losing a few extra games and parting off some pieces and starting to get draft picks if people know how to get those.
Yeah, and it's not, for me, it's not even the process of, oh, let's get Bedard. It's the process of knowing what you are and selling off some assets and building up the system the way it should have been done for, let's face it, the last 10 years. I mean, this team right now is capped out. They don't have really any stud prospects in the pipeline. And the ones that they do have aren't really, living up to expectations. Like Lekkerimäki in Sweden, I think he's got like 4 points and 4 or 5 points in how many games. Podkolzin hasn't scored this year. Hoglander, and I know they're not prospects, but they're still in that kind of young window. Hoglander has 1 goal. You look down at, what's happening with Rathbone. This guy can't get into the lineup. He's just sitting in the press box. And let's remember, like, he missed a lot of hockey the last few years, both with injuries and with COVID. He's one of those guys that probably too good for the AHL, but so far at the NHL level, he hasn't proved himself. So, and the only way to prove himself is to actually get in. And there's guys like Bradley Stillman that's blocking him. Now, for me, I would put Burrows ahead of Rathbone just based on the way he's played. But going back to the whole thing, it's, you don't need, I mean, Bedard would be great. And like the storylines, could you imagine, the phenom, the local boy coming in? And I'm not even so sure he would actually fix things entirely, but he would give that glimmer of hope to fans who just wanted a true sustainable contender. Because at least that would be like, okay, we have this building block. And if they did actually want to, blow it up, which I don't think is the best way to go. Like, I still think you can build around Pettersson and Hughes. You could probably make the argument for Demko too, although if they really wanted to rebuild, trade a goaltender who's still on a great contract. Now, he hasn't played anywhere close to standards this year, but the point is, I think that they still, Pettersson and Hughes, yeah, albeit they're starting to get closer to that mid-20 range where might be starting to get a little too old. But the point is that you have the foundational pieces to build around, and I don't think just blowing it up and restarting that is the best route, because that's going to be another 3-4 years, and who wants to sit through that? And that's a lot of pain. Like, you think this is bad right now? If they actually committed to a full-on rebuild, man, it would get dark, and it would get, apathy would set in. But there would be that faction of fans like, okay, well, at least they're doing it, the right way after all these years. I lived in Toronto for 6.5 years, kind of right before the Matthews time, and they purposely tanked. Like, one of the few teams that actually have tried, them along with Buffalo, trying to get Eichel, or trying to get McDavid, and they ended up with Eichel. It doesn't really happen that much for teams to actually purposely be bad and rebuild. Yeah. I mean, the great example is kind of the LA Kings. They were able to keep that core of Kopitar, Doughty, Quick. Mind you, they gave out some pretty steep contracts to those guys, but they won their Stanley Cups and they had earned it. But
winning
what they
everything.
Exactly, absolutely, it's the ultimate cure potion. But they knew what they were. They said, okay, well, we can't build. What we have now is not going to get us to where we need to be in a couple of years. So, and same thing with the Rangers, like the letter that they sent out to their fans. And now look at them. Like, it's incredible to me to see teams like LA and Anaheim, and even now Detroit. Like, they were good for however many years, then they sucked for a bit. They built their system back up, and now they're starting to take those leaps. And where have the Canucks? Where have the Canucks been? They've been in that in-between zone where they don't even know what they are. They never committed to a full rebuild. It's like they're
in the friend zone.
They're in the worst possible place. Like, you can't serve two masters at once. You can't try to be competitive. You can't try to be, rebuild. So you got to just stick to one plan. And I thought when Rutherford and Alvin came here, I'm like, okay, Benning's gone. They're going to do things the right way. And like, for the most part so far, not much has changed. The Mikheyev signing in the summer, while I like the player, like, they didn't need to add more term and dollars on the wing when they already had Kuzmenko coming in, right? On an ELC, like,
man, this
there
guy
wasn't
is
a lot
speaking
out
my
there.
language right now.
There wasn't a lot out there on the back end to improve, but a guy like John Marino would have been a nice addition. Shoulda, coulda, woulda in hindsight, but they committed more term and money to something that they already had a lot of, and they failed to address the most pressing issue that was the back end of the decor. Now, a healthy a Demko that's living up to expectations would still mask a lot of the warts, just like it has been the last few seasons, and even going back to Markstrom. But this is what happens when you have a goaltender who has covered up a lot of your issues, and he doesn't live up to expectations. And it sucks to see that he's not playing at this level, but this is kind of the ramifications of ignoring your biggest pressing need in the offseason. The goals are nice, but I think we'd all trade like it's crazy. They have 3 guys right now in Miller, Horvat, and Pettersson who are all on pace for 40 or above goal seasons, right? I think we would all trade half of those goals easily for better two-way defensive structure in a heartbeat.
And probably one of the worst goaltending performances in NHL history.
In a long time, yeah. And I feel bad for a guy like Bruce, who ultimately is going to wear this here at some point. Now, a lot of Boudreau's teams, if you looked over the past few years, they don't play with that structure that, pretty much all organizations want. Like most coaches in the NHL, if they could win 2-1, 3-2, and kind of just suck the life out of the other team, I think they'd be happy with a dull hockey. Sure. But Boudreau's teams have never played like that. So, and this goes back to Aquilini hiring a coach before he hired the president of hockey ops and the general manager, who are supposed to bring in, their own guy, right? So now you have this disconnect of, well, what systems are we going to play? What's the identity of the team? And in the offseason, like there was that waiting game, like, oh, is Boudreau going to be back? Is Boudreau's Alvin and Rutherford's guy? Matt Sakaris talked a lot about that on the show and took a lot of heat for it. But now it's looking like he was right about that, because everything we've heard in the media from Rutherford's mouth himself, like he will shit on the structure at any chance he can. You don't see him really backing the coach, giving confidence to him about his job security going forward. Now, you can take that as, well, he's being honest with the team, but I don't think that's the message that fans want to hear. Fans want the organization to be on the same page from the top on, and leadership starts at top. It starts with the Aquilini, it works its way to the president of hockey ops, all through the management and scouting staff and down into the coaching staff. Well, if they're not on the same page, how do you expect the players are going to be on the same page? The players, as much as they want to say, oh, we don't listen to the media and social media, they're tapped.
There's no way. Especially not in this market. You can't help it. In this
market, they know what's going on. So that stuff is a distraction in itself. And that's why I didn't like Rutherford going on 650, because it just added more fuel to the fire. It was unnecessary. And I'm sure that they had, behind closed doors meeting about that. And maybe Bruce wasn't getting the message. And hey, Jim's a seasoned guy. He's veteran in this sport. He's been around. He's won his cups. Yeah, so that was a calculated move on his part, and I just feel bad for Boudreau, because you can see it in his post-game media availabilities. Like,
he's tired.
He doesn't even know, and he's joking about his future. Like like all the power.
He's with house money right now, right? Like he's in a position. Yeah,
it is. It's such a weird season. Like as you were saying before, like bizarro world, right? Like when have we seen Canucks goalies struggle, and when have we seen these crazy offensive outbursts from players? It's totally new to us, but
it's almost like
at the very most, at least they're exciting.
It just reminds me, like when season 1 happened, when Aquilini took over, it was like, Vigneault was in place or whatever, and then Gillis was brought in, and then Gillis made the decision, we're going to stick with Vigneault, and I coach this way because this is the players that I have. Like, if you give me different players, I'll coach a different system. And ultimately it worked out. And it's almost like all these years later, we're sort of seeing it again, but it's not having the same impact that it did before, right? I'm like, okay, well, this is my coach. I like this guy. He's got a good track record. You bring in the new management group. The new management group comes in, and I think he's hoping that it's just going to catch lightning in a bottle like he did all those years ago back in 2009, I guess, the first couple of times that you're seeing Vigneault. Yeah. And it doesn't happen that way, because it almost never happens that way. Like, that was so rare what happened with Vigneault and Gillis back then, for a coach to make that kind of change and that kind of ascension past that point, that it was almost like, are we just hoping that was going to go again? Because it was so apparent, even from the negotiations from bringing Boudreaux back that it just wasn't going to be a team that was on the same page. We're still feeling that 20 some odd games into the season, and it hasn't let up like one bit. I don't care if there's wins or not.
Like they're forcing it to basically exist, right? Like no, this isn't a secret. We all know what's going on. He's a lame duck coach at this point, and
you feel for him.
Yeah, you do, and he's going through the motions, which is super unfortunate. But he's coaching a team that you're hoping that there's going to be change, but realistically, like, things could fizzle out. Things could, we could ride a win streak. They could go on a losing streak, and it's almost like it doesn't matter either way.
Yeah.
Because at the end of this season, they could just move on from him, which they likely will.
Yeah.
And they could move on from some other players, which they likely will. It's like this season just kind of sits in limbo, and we're just watching it just happen before our eyes, and that's kind of it.
And another year of Bo Horvat's prime, the best year he's had statistically, is going to waste. Another year of Elias Pettersson, Quinn Hughes,
exactly.
Demko.
Those
are
an
the
outlier
year, but like they've failed Horvat in his time as a Canuck. He hasn't played. He played his first year, the playoff series against Calgary, and I'm not going to include the bubble, but he hasn't played anything since. And those are his prime years where you want him to be the leader and lead by example. And you know what? He's done that for the most part, but he can't do it all himself. And it's just incredible that this year, like, he's on pace for 65, 70 goals, whatever the hell it is. I mean, he's
going to win the Cy Young Award for sure.
It's fitting too, because they just lock up Miller. They lock him up to the contract everybody was hoping wouldn't happen, but then it did. And then all of a sudden the talk goes to Bo, and not only just goes to Bo, like it goes like a full 180. Like, well, now we're talking about a guy that is dominating for this team, that is leading the league in scoring, and
the price is only going up.
And you're looking at the other guy like, oh, I guess we made a mistake. But we told you, like, you and me and the other guy down the street and the guy on the bus and the guy at Starbucks, and we all told you, and the guy that's been here since day one, that you screwed up. Well, the previous regime screwed up on that goaltending situation, how that had to be. You traded and got this guy, and you're basically just continuing this entire thing on. So anyway, let's leave Bo Horvat and all that alone.
Well, I had one Bo Horvat question though. So
Go for it.
I like to, we ask this question from time to time, Grady. Like, Horvat's going to get traded. I mean, we really feel that at this point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows with this organization, because again, it's silly season, right? So, what two ways that this can go about? So, what do you think happens with Horvat in a trade scenario, and what do you want to happen with Horvat in a trade scenario? Because we all know that this organization, no matter who's here, does what they want.
I'll start with what I want. What I'd want them to do is find a team that, and with the cap going up, maybe, but I'm not keeping my hopes up, dump Miller off. And if you just got almost like a cap dump at this point, dump Miller off. Maybe you find some more wiggle room if you can move out of Myers or Garland. But like, who is taking these contracts at this point, right?
That's the big question.
You're trying to trade off guys when their value is down in the dumps, right? Like, even like Besser, like, I know he's got the points, and I pointed it out on Twitter the other day. Like, well, at the very minimum, he's a point per game, or just under it. But the defensive game isn't there. And other teams, like, there's pro scouts watching every game. Like, if the fans and the media see it, the pro scouts are going to see it double, triple, quadruple the time, right? So I would like them to somehow, and then we talk about the cap flexibility and creating cap space, and this goes back to the Mikheyev thing. Like, they just committed more of that. I'd like to see them open some of that up. Now, that's probably wishful thinking on my part. So going over to what I think they'll do, I think they're going to probably, trade Horvat. Now, shameless plug here, Darren Drager on the Ray Ferraro and Darren Drager hockey podcast on GoGo Sports said today that the Canucks don't want to trade him and that they want to find a way to sign him. Now, you can say all of that, but there hasn't been really a lot of talks between the agent and the team, by all accounts. Now, mind you, same thing happened with Miller. We heard about, there was no talks and it's very likely to trade. And then boom, a deal came together like that.
Mhm.
So I feel like if they were to trade Horvat, that's just sending kind of the wrong message almost to your fans that we're giving up on a guy that has poured his heart and soul into this organization, is having this career year. Now, you can say the same, well, you shouldn't sign guys off career years because look what happened with Miller last year. And sure, he's on another good pace to start the season. But they ultimately, in the summer, they made the wrong move, I think, by committing to Miller, because you can't keep all these guys. And even if you want to keep all these guys, like, what have they proved to this point?
Why
so you
would
can
you? Why
finish
should you?
10th.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the bubble was such an outlier, and everyone that talks about, they played so well and they beat the defending Stanley Cup champions and they pushed Vegas and they beat Minnesota. But Demko was playing bubble Demko, where he was stopping 98% of the shots faced or whatever the hell it was.
And they got rid of all the guys that helped them do it. They got rid of Tyler Toffoli. They got rid of Tanev. They got rid of Edler. They got all the guys that kept them in that. And again, they parted them out, which is great.
Yeah. That's an underlying storyline here that I don't think is, it's in the back of the minds of the players. Like, they lost some true character and leadership, I think, is a tad overrated in hockey. But there's something to be said when you lose, 3 guys like that, and then you come back the next season and the COVID year was just wonky. Like, I think that really took a toll on the team. And just quickly here, like, another thing too is, the coaching changes that they lost Manny Malhotra. They lost
huge impact.
Bradshaw to Philadelphia to go coach with Torts. Like,
yep.
There's actual tangible improvements in the PK last year after Nolan Baumgartner was let go when they fired Green and company. So that's another storyline that I think is part of this whole problem here. But just getting back to it, I would like them to keep Horvat, but at the same time, if you can get a very good return, and listen, there's not a lot of centers out there this offseason on the open market. So, there's not going to be a ton of rentals available. They might be able to really cash in, because the way Detroit's playing right now, I don't think they're going to be trading Dylan Larkin. They want to make the playoffs after these last few years of, rebuilding themselves back up. So
Exactly.
It all depends on what the package is coming back, right? Like, and it's funny how things change. Like, we never really know. Yeah. No. You remember the rumored Miller deal, which was Lundqvist, Hedl, and a first? Man, that would look pretty solid.
How good would that look right now? Oh.
Yeah.
I just feel like, I don't know if there's ever been a team that's been so inept at capitalizing on a tremendous opportunity that's in front of them, more so than the Vancouver Canucks in the last decade. And I'll tell you right now, if they're saying that, I'll tell you right now that if they want to sign, if they do want to keep, in truth, Horvat, and it's not that they want to, of course they want to keep Horvat, but if they find a way to keep Horvat in a career year, I guarantee you we're looking at a career year for Pettersson next year, and that's just the next mistake we're looking at.
Right.
Not the fact that they might keep him, but the fact that he was only locked up to that deal that he was given.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and why would, if you're Horvat or Pettersson right now and you see everything going on and new management team coming in and what's happening with Bruce, would you really want to commit to this team right now? Or would you want to go and say, I want to be a winner?
Please sign me up for 7 more years of this tire fire, please.
You know what, though? That's an interesting question, because you look at one guy that did sign up for it, and he's, I would say, just as aware of what's going on. Now, I mean, everybody wants to cash in a check. And exactly. You look at the one guy that did cash in, and it was JT Miller. Now, he probably could have cashed that check anywhere else in the NHL. So if it's a great point that you look at Pettersson and I mean, even Hughes, I guess, and you look at Bo, what's to say that, if Miller's here, I mean, clearly he's buying into whatever the future is. He doesn't want to see this whole thing fall apart either. So it's
scary,
it is scary. You know what isn't scary, though? The most famous segment in podcasting. We call it Dudes and Guys. It even has a theme song. Well, it's a modified version. It's not the old one, but it'll do. So Grady, when you're not working, obviously you do listen to our show
Man, this has been
weekly.
great. I'm glad that you're here.
You probably even watch our live stream as much as humanly possible when you're not, doing other stuff, probably playing, Modern Warfare or something. I'm not sure. I really don't know. But
I gotta get a PS5, man. That's my
there you
next
go.
on my purchase list. Yeah.
If for whatever reason, like you've taken a few weeks off and you're like, oh, they haven't really done Dudes and Guys a lot this season. Ted, could you just remind Grady how it works exactly?
Refresh.
Just in case.
Yeah, so I mean, dudes and guys. So every team has got a dude, and every team has got a bunch of guys, right? So it's pretty simple, right? If you're going to be selecting a guy, it's somebody who could just have sucked. It's somebody who looks completely average, somebody who you just don't notice, just an also ran. And then on the flip side, if you're picking a guy, it's someone who's just like literally blown the doors off for you, is like by far and away the most impactful player on the roster for whatever reason. Like there's no rules on this thing. You could just say that you saw him blow his nose on the bench and you thought that was kind of gross. Like whatever you're into can be a reason that you select a dude or a guy for dudes and guys.
So dudes are awesome, guys are not awesome, and we always let guests go first. So, and we start with that. So who is your guy for this week? So like not great.
I hate to dump on him, but
throw this too. You don't have to go with the obvious. You don't have to pick players. Sometimes it can be you can go off the board completely. You can pick like the 1982. No, don't do that. But
okay, I will go. Sorry, dude is good guy.
Dude is good. We're doing guys first though.
Okay, we're doing guys. Okay, guys. I was gonna say Riley Stillman or OEL, but I feel like they're getting dumped on so much. But I mean, rightfully so, especially OEL for the money he makes. Now, he played better last night. I'll go with Jim Rutherford, because when we first came in and his kind of reputation around the league is he was Trader Jim. And he's talked about, well, we need to fix this and we need to clear the cap and the structure, but we haven't really seen any moves up until this point to, for him to back his words up. So I get he wants to be patient and he wants to feel things out, but he's coming up on a year now, December 5th, right? That he's been on the job. And I mean, the bar was so low from the last regime that, there's been some nice parts here, but he hasn't really done too much, like, peripheral moves. I mean, the Ethan Bear trade was nice, and I like the German acquisition.
Some minor stuff for sure.
Yeah, and like credit to them, like Neil Zaman, like gets a good find on their pro scouting staff, but it's just a lot more of like what we've been subjected to, and maybe we're just like so conditioned to that we're almost okay with it at this point. But I want to see some actual moves here and some forward thinking, not, attaching a second round pick to get rid of Jason Dickinson when, you could have buried him in the AHL. Now it's not my money that I'm playing with, so fair enough. Sure. But I think it's time for this team to be shaken up, because this core it's rotten. It's not getting the job done. And, the worst place you can be in hockey, as we talked about, is in between that, like, bottom of the barrel standings list and kind of the fringe playoff teams. So, and that just kind of that sets your franchise back. So I'll say Jim Rutherford. And on the flip side,
wait, we don't do the other ones yet. We go in a circle.
Sorry.
You forgot to say that. I like how you mentioned though, like that the bar is pretty low. Like we're still tripping on the bar though. That's even if they've raised the bar, like we're still tripping over it. So the bar isn't exactly that much higher. So Ted, who's your guy?
This is a tough one. Yeah, because I don't want to continue to I think Demko was there for me. I think there's just another blown game, another game with an under 870 save percentage. But he did have the game in LA where I feel like finally we've seen a little bit of the Demko that we want to see. So I feel like he's kind of saved a little bit. But earlier in the show, Grady, you mentioned OEL sort of going back down to that 17, 18 minute a night pairing role as opposed to playing the 22, 23. And he's sort of become like that Alex Edler 2.0 version, right? Late Graybeard Eddie the best version of Eddie was at 17, 18 minutes a night, and not this 22, 23 minute a night version of Alex Edler, who sort of just got chewed up because he was so badly miscast in that spot. So yeah, he's looked really good with eased up minutes. But as a result, other guys are getting more minutes. And one guy that's got a little bit more minutes plunked on him has been Tyler Myers. And I feel like anytime Myers is up above the 17, 18, he starts to struggle too. So, I mean, we're looking at, I mean, he's only got 4 points this season. I mean, he only had 1 goal last year, and he hasn't scored anything this year for a guy that they do ask to kind of take on a little bit of offensive role from this team that hasn't really done anything. So I'm just continuing to not see anything out of his game. It's nice that he walks around a little bit as a team enforcer, sort of sticks up for guys when they need him. He plays physical, you know, he can skate. He's got all the good things, but you know, just for the last like 5 to 6 games, it's looking like nothing is progressing. Like he literally is what he is at this point. And that's just not enough for me. And it continues to be not enough. So I'm going to start back on the dump train for Tyler Myers, unfortunately.
Oh, it's been a season or 2 since we've been on that train.
Yeah, I've been real good. I haven't put anything on the Tyler Myers train for a while now, and I've been trying to be nice.
Guys.
But
yeah,
we're back now. We're back.
To be fair with Myers, like, listen, I'm not a fan of his, but the reason why he was playing those minutes and getting put in the roles because they didn't have anybody else. Now that Ethan Bear is there, you've seen them break up that pairing. So now maybe that can kind of like mitigate, some of his ice time. Hopefully. And he can kind of play a little lower in the lineup where he's probably best slotted at this point. So I like that though. Isn't
it nice to feel like you need to shelter your $6.5 and $7.5 million defensemen in lower pairing? Like let's find a safe space for let's find a safe space for $16 million to skate around on our back end, please and thank you. And at the same time, please make sure that you scratch Kyle Burrows.
Yeah, I've got a good one for you. He's Russian, and he's had kind of a rough sophomore season. Vasily Podkolzin is going to be my guy this week. It's tough watching a guy that has a spark to him or did have a spark, and I don't know what's going on. I think there's a lot of things going on with that team as we've kind of waxed nauseum on, but wax poetic. Maybe that's the phrase. That's the phrase people are using. Sorry, Steve.
Wax nauseum might work.
Wax nauseum add poetic. I'm not sure. He's got a handful of assists this season, which is fine, but he's not
the 10th overall pick. He's got to score.
But it's not even that. He's not the Podkolzin he was last season so far anyway. And again, sophomore slump kind of thing. I get that. Yeah. It does exist in the NHL. And I mean, with everything going on with this team, maybe it's just as simple as, getting a spark out of one game, and maybe just like the fight was a nice little doozy in there. So maybe it's just he needs that almost, Maybe he just needs to be a bit more physical, like actually physical, and not just kind of against the boards, or because there is talent there, and I think we all know that there is, and I would just like to see him kind of step up a little bit more. And usually when I bump a guy on this show, it seems to bounce back. So for all we know, Saturday Podkolzin pots 2, and I look like a genius. And next week, I have nothing to say but just to raise my hands. And
that's if he gets in the lineup, but
that's also true.
You know what? The underlying metrics are actually pretty good. I just pulled them up here on all these numbers and data. It's just spinning around in my head. But you're right, because at the end of the day, it's a bottom line business, and I think his skill set for what he is, he's really sound defensively, and he's a good checker. He's a pretty good playmaker. But when you're picked that high, and when you're given chances to play with some better players, you got to put the biscuit in the basket, as they say. Now it could just be kind of like a shooting percentage dip, and he's struggling at the old cliche. He's gripping the stick too hard, whatever it is. It's not like he's looked invisible, but at some point here, the production's got to come. And he is a younger player, and it just could be a whole learning experience in the development. Like, development isn't always an upwards trajectory, right?
Exactly.
Case in point, Elias Pettersson. So
he had his halfway through his first season. So
yeah, I just I just hope when he does get back in the lineup, like he's not planted on the fourth line playing 9-10 minutes a night. Mind you, he's got to show and earn the ice time, so there's a balance point there. But the talent's there, the effort is always there, and like him on the boards, I've noticed his board play and his positioning on guys, like it's pretty damn good, all things considered, for how young he is. But we all seen the shot. We remember the shot, like his first goal scored last year against the Flyers, and are like bar down sniper, high glove.
He's got a howitzer for sure.
We just haven't seen that, right? So, yeah, it's warranted for sure.
Ted, who's your dude?
Who
puts that twinkle in your mustache?
Yeah, maybe not so much the last game, but I know we go on the course of like a week. But I've really liked Curtis Lazar's game since he's been back in the lineup, and I know that it's not his role to score, and it's weird to pick a guy that only plays 10 minutes a night. And Luke Shen has been a guy that I've selected a couple of times this season because if he's not scoring, he's at least towing the line. And what else is there for this team right now? Sometimes I feel like, right? And I feel like, especially in that LA game, Lazar was out there looking like a freaking Scud missile, right? Just running around, just hammering guys. And it was so nice. It was like shades of Rafi Torres. And it got me so excited just to see somebody out there just trying to drag. I mean, I think he even said it, just going to drag his team into the fight. And I think he really did that. Like, you could really see when he was bearing down on the forecheck that like defenders were afraid of him. Like they knew that he was coming, and then he goes out there a little bit earlier and wins a big draw on the penalty kill, and then plays hard on a guy in the corner and doesn't take any penalties. Like, that's the exact kind of player that we're looking for. And I know it's hard to play that role, especially if you're in the bottom six all the time. And you ask a lot of a guy to go out there and play with that level of energy and that level of physicality and only play 10 minutes a night. And I think he's done a really good job of that. I mean, I think, there was minutes or moments in the last couple of games, I think, where things could have been a little bit better, but I think on the whole, he's been somebody that I sort of appreciated in that bottom six. So that's looking like a really good signing, and I'm happy with that one right now. So it's a weird dude, but I'm going to say Curtis Lazar was a dude this past week.
That's how we roll here, though. We've always had that mentality. Sometimes you got to dig deep. Grady, I know you're just chomping at the bit. You've got one just sitting there. You're ready to tee off, knock this thing 400 yards. Who's your dude?
400 yards into the bush. Okay, I know it's the Canucks podcast, but I just pulled up NHL.com, and I was, not shocked, but I couldn't believe he was this high. Jason Robertson on the Dallas Stars, second in NHL points, only to Connor McDavid, tied with McDavid at 16 goals. Boy, what a draft that the Stars had in 2017 when they got Heiskanen, Ottinger, and Robertson. Like, talk about setting your team up for the future.
We'll never know.
He played. He was playing. I remember last year he was playing on that line with Hintz and Pavelski. I imagine that they're probably still together, although line combos change all the time. But I just like pure goal scorer. Plays in a market that doesn't get a lot of attention from national media. Like, if this guy played in Canada or say like New York or somewhere more prominent, you'd be hearing all about him. But there's inside the NHL circles, like he's getting his respect. But it just jumped off to me there. So he will be my my dude or guy. Sorry.
Oh, you're literally just not. Wow. This might be a first? Is this a first?
It's a first, yeah.
Because dude and guy are both.
You made a good case. You made a good case.
Dud and guy? I don't know.
Duds and guys, yeah.
Duds and guys. I'm impressed. Like you knew the assignment, and you're just like, what? I'm gonna.
I mean, he picked a good dude though, right? Jason Robertson in his last. Yeah, Jason Robertson's last 5 games has 6 goals.
No big deal. No big deal.
2 goals, 1 goal.
I'm thankful that you left my dude then, because I want to finish strong on this. I didn't think I was going to get here, but I am happy that at least he's back on the scoreboard one way or another. The Crown Prince himself, Mr. Flo, Brock Besser.
Yeah.
2 goals, 4 assists in his last 5 games. He has looked better. His shot seems to be getting better as well. I'm
He's
not.
getting them off at least.
I'm
He's
not
shooting.
overly.
Just
I'm
say
not
that.
He's
overly
shooting.
jacked with him. However, I am impressed that he has become a reliable part of this offense once again. And I think with the right opportunities, if they can continue to move this power play along and they can start,
Mhm.
dispersing the puck a little bit more, I'm liking the rushes that he's been getting. I think that his shot seems to be there. I think he's confident in it. It's just getting those opportunities. And I don't know. I mean, what's not
Yeah.
to like about Brock? At the same time, if it means that it's going to build up his trade value and then we go after and get maybe, a
Mhm.
decent defenseman via, wherever, I'm okay with that too. But for now, for this week, I'm very happy with the return of Brock Besser to the dude portion of the show. So for me, it warms my heart. I know it warms our listeners' hearts,
Been
but
a minute.
it absolutely has been a minute. Speaking of
Yeah.
minutes, we're at 65 of them.
I should just also
Oh.
throw out there that Ethan Bear.
Yeah.
Ethan Bear's
That's a good
honorable
one.
mention.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Corsi's is still a little low, working that back up. But yeah, he's looked good since his.
I was gonna go. I was thinking Ethan Bear, but I figured Brock needs some.
I'm just curious how he just wasn't able to get into the lineup in Carolina. I don't know.
There's such a deep
Weird.
decor there
Yeah.
in Carolina. But mind you, Jalen Chatfield, of all people, was playing ahead of him. And I think it's just one of those things where a coach and player just, for whatever reason, don't mesh. There was some concussion issues there as well. And I think he had some long COVID battles too. So you factor all those in, and one of the deepest teams in the league. And
yeah, they can afford
not
to get
that
rid of
he
somebody.
wasn't playing bad. It's just
Yeah.
other guys were ahead of him, right? And that was a nice, we've ripped on the Canucks management a fair amount in this interview, but credit to them. Like they only parted with a 5th round pick. I think Carolina retained a bit of salary, if I'm not mistaken.
They did.
So, and there's a guy that showed a lot of promise in his first few years in Edmonton and just fell out of sorts for whatever reason. And, what have we talked about for the longest time with this team? They need right shot, mobile defensemen who can chip in offensively. And, for the most part, and he's physical too, like
He
especially
fits in.
angling guys in the boards.
Fits
Yeah.
the mold.
Like a lot what I've seen from Bear. So that's it's a good one to bring up as well.
On that defense, so I know, Ryan, we're getting on for time, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, Grady. Do you get to watch a lot of Abbotsford games?
No, I wish I would love to, but it's just when they were in the playoffs last year and Puck Golden went down, I was watching them, but no.
One guy that I was thinking about that kind of has lugged around on that roster for the last little while and had some moments to him in Florida was Brady Keeper.
Yeah.
I'm just really surprised that that a guy like that hasn't got a shot in Vancouver. He's super physical, and he's just a breakout machine too. So just for a team that seems to really struggle with puck movement, I'm just curious why he hasn't got a look yet.
I remember in camp watching him at Whistler and just some of the decisions, just puck management, and the feet weren't there, skating full on. Yeah, he was okay, sure, NHL worthy, but those tight pivots and the cutbacks in the corners, like the down lows, I thought, you really started to see kind of him being exposed.
Okay.
And, maybe that's still recovering from that leg injury. Like, what a brutal injury to sustain. That takes you 12, 16, 18 months before you really start to feel normal again. And he mentioned in camp, I remember doing an interview scrum with him. He said he felt good, but I mean, you never really know.
2 years before you're realistically NHL ready again.
So listen, I love the story and the adversity he's faced, both on and off the ice. I would love to see a guy like that make the jump, but he's got the offensive game really isn't there for him. So if the offensive game isn't there, then he's got to be really stout defensively. And I'm just not sure, maybe at the AHL level, but NHL level, I mean, he's only played 2 NHL games, right? So maybe if they get really depleted, mind you, I think they kind of like Juleson a bit more ahead of him. So
last time we'll see. Squad that got the call too, right? So
right, yeah.
You got a few guys to go before.
Who knows
they can get to him.
If Myers gets moved, or if they trade Shen, which they probably in theory should, to capitalize on him, but there's something to be said about what he brings to this team, the character, the leadership, the physicality. Like the guy's leading the league in hits, right? Sticks up for such a warrior out there. Like he's eating pucks, he's chipping. Like his offensive production is incredible this year. Now, I guess when you play with Quinn Hughes, your numbers are going to go up. But yeah, who
Teams are
knows?
looking for guys like that. Ryan Reeves was just
Exactly.
acquired for that reason, right?
Exactly. So sell high when you can, and who knows? Maybe in the off season, because he is a UFA this year, you revisit thing. Maybe you give him kind of like a $1.5 million like two-year term. That's if he would want to come back here, because he's at the point now where he doesn't have a lot of years left, right? And he was almost out of the NHL a couple of years ago. So maybe he wants to go to, like the team like he was with Tampa a couple of years back. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of navigate something like that, because you can make a strong argument that he should be a Canuck going forward, but that's one of the most attractive pieces, especially at the price, right? Like, especially at the deadline when teams are so up against it and they're literally counting the dollars that they have to work with. That's such a cheap deal to make it work. So we'll see here.
Awesome. So, I mean, at this point in the show, like we're kind of closing it down to the end. So, yeah, I mean, I would like to give you take a quick minute, tell us about what Grady's got going on, what you're doing, anything on the horizon, what's going on in your world. Shameless plug time.
Shameless plug. Okay. Well, I don't know if you guys saw today. Scott Rintoul launched a cool project under the Go Goat Sports umbrella. Man, I'm so excited, just from like a fan standpoint, not necessarily like a colleague standpoint. I mean that too, but just to be able to hear from all the guys from the West Coast Express. So it's like I don't know all the details, but I think it's like an 8 podcast series thing. Basically what he's going to be doing is interviewing the West Coast Express and then some of the guys that they played with and some of the people around the team, coaches, managers. So that's coming to Go Goat Sports. And if you don't know Go Goat Sports, it's a media network, and we have Ray and Dregs, which is Ray Ferraro and Darren Dreger's podcast, which I think is one of the best hockey podcasts out there. I'm a big fan of Ray.
So good.
And his analysis. So we got that. We got Rink Wide with J-Pat and Wadden, which I think, I'm biased, fully admit it, is the best pound for pound Canucks podcast out there, other than the PP1, of course.
He's so good at. He just knows. He knows. We're gonna be getting some DMs from the rest of the Go, and I'm gonna hear about it. Be like, you need to get him to stop saying all those nice things.
I'm pretty sure they just DM me right now, and I think it says, "Beat it, nerd." That's what they said to me. So
get out of our space. Get out of our space.
And then we have Rink Wide Toronto, which is a Maple Leafs podcast, because I know your listener and audience wants more Leafs coverage. The more Leafs coverage you can get, the better, right?
It's the biggest 2% of our following.
Absolutely. So David Alter does that, and with some hosts out of Toronto. It's hey, if you like the Maple Leafs, check it out. You probably don't, but I'll plug it anyways. And then Scarce and Price producing that now, doing their social media, and it's a lot of fun to be kind of in the know and working with those guys who are, I think some of the best radio hosts around in terms of how they interact and how they put shows together, and interviewing guests, and trying just to, we're trying to carve out a piece in the market. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there right now. There's so many different ways to consume the podcast. If you're a YouTube guy, if you want to listen through podcasts, if you want to follow the clips through Twitter, like there's so many different ways you consume it. So just trying to plug away at that, and really kind of grow at all the platforms. Like we're really pushing YouTube right now. So it's one of the things I've kind of really tried to take pride in is making the show as accessible as we can to all the different platforms and audience out there. Because, there's still people that are new to the whole podcast thing. Like almost weekly we get, how do we listen live to you guys? I can't find listen. Well, we're not live anymore, because it's just the data has told us that, podcast and the digital age is king. And that's not to say that, there's not a place for radio and live streaming, because there absolutely is, especially like Twitter Spaces, something we've started to experiment that I think is really cool. replacing that. So yeah, if you're interested in, or anyone out there listening that wants to get your company or employer's name on the show and some sponsorship, hit us up, gogoatsports.com. We have all the aforementioned podcasts. We're on every single platform. Well, not every single one, but most of the big heavy hitters: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
Ones.
Yeah, the important ones.
MySpace.
Yeah. MySpace, Nexopia,
Mastodon, Hive.
Yeah,
Friendster.
Yeah.
We're looking at this thing called Only Stand.
Oh, perfect. That's going to be interesting.
I don't know anything about that. So yeah, hit us up. Appreciate the support, and I love what you guys are doing. I think, one thing that really stuck with me that Jason Bochford said, and God rest his soul, before he passed, was like, the more content you can have out there, the more people engage in the market. It just keeps all of us on our toes, like, not to steal ideas, but you can learn something from every single podcast, every single host out there. Like, there's something to take away. And it's just really cool now. Like, I went to school for broadcasting, but I really took akin to the social media side of it, because I knew, like, in the back of my mind, like, this is only gonna continue to grow and evolve. And there's days where I have a love-hate relationship with it. I want to throw my phone at the wall because I just can't stand it. But yeah, it's just cool to see, for me, to, like, so many different like factions of Canucks fans, and every kind of show has a different style. Are they stats heavy? Are they more just off the top of the dome? Like, it's just cool to see everyone out there and contributing and trying to carve out a little piece of the puzzle here. So yeah, keep it up, guys. It's I mean, look what everything looks very professional from my end, from like the microphone to the presentation of the graphics. It looks sharp. So keep plugging away, and yeah, I would love to come back sometime and kick it with you guys again. So thanks for having me.
Great. We'd love to have you. This is awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Well,
All right, guys.
It's been a good one. On behalf of Ted and Grady, I am Ryan. This is the PP1 Podcast on the Dean Blundell Network. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Everywhere you could find the Go Sports media stuff, likely you can find us there as well. We don't have an OnlyFans, thankfully, for everybody's benefit. So don't bother looking. Don't bother looking for us there. But if you want to send us money, that's the next best thing, and we won't give you anything for it. So aside from the show. So on behalf of all three of us, this is PP1 Podcast.